thank you very much. Paul's kindly agreed to take questions. There are a couple of nice people with microphones. One over here, I think.
Hello, anyone hear me? Hello, Paul. Kenneth Bruce. I'm a management advisor stroke consultant. I've been for 20 years. And I can only say that you've been my guru for as long as I can remember. And like you, I was born in 1940. Well, you're not as old as me, but I was born in 1940, and I've been through all the recessions and booms that you speak of. And I would totally endorse everything you say, particularly the 50-year cycle. And I would like to thank you for coming tonight.
Thanks for that. Very good.
It's all right, I can shout, I think. Everyone can hear me. By the way, is George Osborne here? If he were, what would you say to him? What advice would you give to the Chancellor of the Exchequer?
Well, you know what? The question is, what advice I would give to the Chancellor of the Exchequer? And, right. First of all, obviously, the BBC journalist, you're not involved in giving political advice to people. I mean, that's one thing. But I think what I say to him, and indeed his Labour counterpart, is that you're only going to get out of what you're in if you can take a wide view of things, and that is means exposing yourself to unorthodox ideas. I've just exposed you lot to probably 9/10 of you never heard of Kondratiev. Maybe you don't even want to know any more about him. Your head's full. But my advice to all policymakers is that if they'd only expose themselves a little bit more to what we call heterodox economics, of the right or left, it would have allowed you to anticipate these things. Because what is absolutely certain is that both what we call the neo-Keynesians, or the heterodox Keynesians, people like Steve Keen, professor in an Australian university, Nouriel Roubini, known now as Dr. Doom, George Magnus, another Keynesian economist with a kind of leftish background, although he works for UBS, Swiss investment bank. If they only listened to them, they'd have heard very senior people saying there's going to be a crash. Okay. Now the other people who said it were these guys, the Austrian school, and they said it too. Unlimited credit creation is going to create a credit-driven boom and bust cycle. So I would say to all these people, to slightly, the moments when they might be tempted to arrogantly brush one aside and treat one as if one is not worth being listened to, I would say to all those politicians, just listen for a bit. Because the thing about journalists, politicos, academics, is that our job is indeed to expose ourselves to ideas that make us uncomfortable. And I think politicians need to do that. So that's my answer. That's my diplomatic virtue of my answer.
I found quite a bit of that very interesting. I was a consultant at PricewaterhouseCoopers for a number of years when Lehman Brothers and indeed the growing band of derivatives started to get used. And I'm very aware that government, particularly the previous government, used PFI as a means of funding our hospitals and our schools, and indeed part of our house building program as a means of extending the 50-year cycle that you pointed to. What I'm interested in, though, is when do you think we're going to get out of it? Because this scaled-up debt that we've got in the use of PFI has only extended the life of the 50-year cycle to possibly become 60 or 70.
Yeah. Well, I know that's the question everybody wants somebody like me to answer, and I generally try and avoid predicting things because I don't. The thing about politicians is they do know a lot more than we do. They see the papers as they've seen everything, and I think I'd like to hear them make a few more predictions about when we're going to get out of these things. But if you look about the UK, let's get right down to brass tacks. Forget Kondratiev, forget the world. The UK at the moment quite definitely is in a balance sheet recession. I'd say my opinion is because you've got the debt to GDP, if you include the assets of the UK banks, puts us on the outlier of any other developed country. We are, depending on how you want to measure it 400, 500, 900% of GDP, depending which banks you include. The UK sovereign debt will reach close to 100 debt to GDP, and then there's all the private stuff on top of it. Now, what to do? Mervyn King is privately, and now because his disgruntled ex-employees have gone around telling everybody publicly, very pleased with himself for talking the pound down in 2007, 2008. Because that 20% fall in sterling probably saved a lot of British manufacturing. You might think it saved it in a very cruel way by getting rid of a third of the workforce and whatever, but had the sterling not fallen when it did, I think certainly manufacturing and some services that are reliant on global exposure would have gone on, maybe, as you say, universities gone under. Now, look, let's put it this way. They're printing a load of money. Printing a load of money and losing your credit rating tends to have one, or in fact two, results. Your currency falls again. I'm pretty certain that's going to happen. So tough luck if you're going like me, you've just booked a holiday in Europe, whatever. But not only does your currency fall, then you've got inflation. And inflation is sucked in. Now there's the problem. If we suck in more inflation, we know that last time we had a recovery, the official story is that what choked the recovery off was imported inflation, because people's purchasing power fell and their ability to get down to Argos, get down to Comet, get down to Jessops fell to the point at which Comet, Argos, Jessops, all the rest of it are in trouble, or indeed in many cases gone. So importing inflation is a gamble, but what is that saying? By their deeds ye shall know them. Is that from the Bible? You see, I quite like that saying, because when people go around saying we don't have a currency policy, we don't have a policy on what the pound should be, but then they take consistent action to depress the value of the pound, I'm pretty certain that's what's going to happen. But the only thing that's going to allow you to then grow your way by devaluing out of crisis is if you've done several things. You've restructured your industry, you've restructured your economy to be modern and highly competitive, and you have a very overtly competitive growth policy, which means this: when Region A in Germany says to Siemens or to Mitsubishi, here's $1 billion to come and set up a plant here, you probably have to go, well, here's $1.5 billion to set up one here. That's what Mandelson was doing in the northeast with the wind farms, and up to a point it worked. But the government of Valencia hates me because I've done this program that says Valencia's a bit corrupt. And when I was interviewing the financial boss of Valencia, he was saying, look, we've gone away from all this building white elephants and tourism, and we're going to rebuild ourselves on the basis of export industry. And I just think, they might do it as well as we could. They might do it better. So it's about how effective this combination, and quite complex. Those of you in West Midlands, industrially based, university based, there'll be experts in this room, I've no doubt, LEP people, whatever, who know how complex and hard it is. When the answer is not the market, the answer is actually quite difficult to come up with. You can get it wrong 9 times out of 10. You can build the wrong kind of aeroplane. Choose the wrong type of transmission box to build. You can do a lot wrong when you're trying to pick winners. Well, I'm giving you a long answer, but I think I can just say that's where the future will be decided.